Welcome, everyone. So appreciate you being here. And thank you for those of you who shared why you're here tonight. So, Jamie and I have been in this industry for about 10 years now. We started at the same time and we have had the opportunity to grow together. And one of the things that we each learned very, very early on is the importance of a network. Part of the opportunity in having a network is having people that are specialists in areas within the industry. So, Jamie, for example, is a specialist in move management and downsizing and transitioning into your new home. Whereas I am a specialist in finding assisted living, memory care, independent living. Both of us are certified senior advisors. So what that means is that we underwent a course of study. We took a exam that demonstrated our competency in understanding what it is to age. When we think about aging, that could be understanding reverse mortgages or long-term care policies or Medicare or Medicaid, which is called Medi-Cal in California. So there's so much to know. I can tell you by way of background, I have an MBA degree. I was a business executive for many years. And the hardest exam I ever took was the CSA exam, hands down, not even close, not even corporate finance. Like CSA exam was very difficult because there's so much to know and so much expertise that's needed, which brings us back to the importance of having a network. In this series, we're bringing in people who have deep expertise in their specialty. So for tonight, we have Alesia who's going to be joining us. But before we get to Alesia, I would like to introduce Jami Shapiro from Silver Linings Transitions.
Thank you, Julie. I'm really happy to be here. And I did want to mention that we're calling this webinar Navigating the Aging Journey, because for those of you who are not working in the senior space, we're really gearing this mostly towards adult children who are coming into waters that they have never been in. That's again where Julie and I are bringing resources together. I wanted to introduce Alesia Clark to you, who I have had the privilege of working with a lot. But before we go into that, I wanted to share something that's a little bit unique about what I am doing and why it matters. I actually am an ADHD coach, and I'm actually an ADHD coach who works with seniors. And that is something that really isn't out in the world at this point. Everybody is talking about ADHD and it's all over TikTok and it's all over the newsstands, but nobody thinks about the impact that it's going to have on seniors. I have been asked time and time again, well, they're a senior. Why does it matter? So that's to say, I'm 80 years old and I don't want to grow. I don't have any more curiosity. I don't want to learn about myself. That's one of the things that's really important to Julie and I and anybody who works with seniors is to give them the honor and the respect that they have earned and stop pushing them aside. But there is a word that I learned that I absolutely love in our CSA studies, and it's called transcendence. And it's basically the ninth stage of life. So Eric Erickson defined 8 stages of life. And when he got into his 80s, he and his wife started to ask their friends how they were feeling and what was happening for them. He actually, in his 80s, defined this ninth stage called transcendence, which is when a person begins to reflect on their lives and they look at the decisions that they've made and the relationships that they've had, and they start to get really reflective. So you will see like a little bit of a retreat for people because they're really introspective now. They're observing their environments. So for me, the understanding of ADHD and how it has impacted our lives, there's a grief and there's a relief that comes for people who discover that they have ADHD and have had it their whole lives. Just to give you a short story, because I don't want to take up too much time from Alesia, but I discovered that my mother had ADHD, which is how I got into this whole thing. She was 77 years old. My mom is really bright and she couldn't finish college. It's one of those things that she just was constantly working jobs. She constantly had clutter. When we realized that this whole time she had undiagnosed ADHD, it has changed our relationship. It changes the way she sees herself. I have a podcast called Grandma Has ADHD, and I did an interview with a woman who was 67, and she said that finding out that she had ADHD was like giving herself permission to finally be herself. So anyway, that's all I want to say about that. I will certainly be doing an episode, I am sure. You can tune into the podcast, Grandma Has ADHD. Really quickly, just want to introduce our businesses too, just so you can find it. And we're going to introduce Alesia. As Julie mentioned, I am the founder of Silver Linings Transitions. We provide move management and home organization services. A lot of people don't even know that this service exists. That's really helping people when they've made the decision to move or they want to downsize and declutter their homes. We really guide them through the process. As Julie mentioned, She does placement, and her company is called Aging 123. So, having said that, I am going to introduce Alesia Clark, who I have had the pleasure of working with for several years. She is an aging life care manager that used to also be called a gerontologist. And I think we've sort of walked away from that terminology. Her company is called Engaged Life Care. We have been brought in on many clients that she has worked with. And when we decided we wanted to start talking about the issues and what you need to look at when you're going into your parents' homes, we just felt like she would be such a natural person. Alicia, do you want to come say hi?
Hello, thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
Thank you. So, can you tell us a little bit about what an aging life care manager does?
Sure. Aging life care managers, we basically help navigate older adults and their families through the challenges of aging. So, we are healthcare professionals. Most of us are either nurses, gerontologists, social workers, some type of healthcare background where we then taken the next step in expertise to practice in the field of care management, which means we then are not only helping families and older adults navigate, but we're also even stepping in and we're serving as care coordinators, or we provide oversight. We help with planning, we help with crisis intervention, we help with resources. So we do all those things that help families make the best decisions for that older adult loved one and or that older adult who's looking at planning out those later years of their life and they want to do it well. We also serve as boots on the ground. Sometimes our families are out of the area, and whether an older adult is living in their long-term home that they've been in for years or they've moved into a community, we still serve as their eyes and ears for what might be going on just to make sure they're getting good care. So we check in, we help with their medical appointments and all the things that just make sure that they're continuing to live well.
Thank you. So, many adult children struggle with their concerns. When should they take action? What are the most overlooked signs that somebody should be looking to properly support aging parents?
Okay, it's always good to be looking. So I like that question. There are subtle things. A lot of times the subtle things can accumulate that then they become red flag issues. But most of those subtle things are changes like in the home of housekeeping or maybe hygiene. You might start to notice dishes piling up or laundry or there's clutter accumulating. You might see that maybe one parent used to always have a clean, exceptional house, and then now all of a sudden it's showing dust. It's just not kept up to how mom used to keep it up. And then there's wearing clothes repeatedly, or there's just some self-care issues where they're just not having the hygiene care that they used to demonstrate before. Then in practical life, you might see that they're missing appointments to doctor's appointments or even social engagements. They're just missing these appointments. They might have medication struggles. You might be at the house and you notice, oh gosh, there was lots of unused bottles that maybe should have been used up. They haven't been properly distributed. Maybe they're out of medication and they're maybe expressing to you that they don't necessarily know what medication is for and when they should be taking it. There might be changes in eating habits where you see that they're not eating as well or that there's spoiled food in the refrigerator or food that is stale in the cupboards. And they might be skipping meals or they're just relying on processed food or takeout. They're just not eating nutritiously like they should. There might be some isolation or withdrawal. There's just pulling away from some activities and some hobbies, and they might be avoiding phone calls or visits from people, just a little bit more reluctant to engage in life. You might see some mood swings or personality shifts. So there's an increase in irritability or maybe some anxiety or just even sadness and just a loss of interest in the things that they used to enjoy. You can also start to maybe notice trouble with mobility or balance. You might start to notice, oh, there's a couple more scrapes or bruises on dad. Maybe when you're noticing him walk, he's a little bit more unsteady, not as steady on stairs and difficulty getting up and out of chairs. So just some little signs of mobility challenges. Then further in, you can start to see issues with maybe unpaid bills or maybe mail stacking up. And then you go through that and you see, oh my goodness, something's been canceled or a service has been disconnected. So those types of things as well. Then there's always the cognitive issues. So where there might be challenges with memory. So it's difficulty following conversations or tracking. And then poor decision making. Might see them be impulsive or have unnecessary expenses. Also forgetfulness of conversations that were just had or repeating the same stories. These are just little things. A lot of times they're just not one in unison, but they can be little subtle things to start to be aware of.
That
One thing I've also seen, and you may have touched on this, is where the withdrawal So maybe they're not as active in their social activities. Maybe they've always played bridge, or they've always gone to church, or maybe they start to withdraw from some of their activities, or they become defensive when you ask questions, or the adult children specifically ask questions. They become very defensive where they never had been before, or some things I've seen as well.
Good point.
One of the things that I have learned that when we're visiting our parents is we really want to get them out of their home environment and see how they're navigating walking. A lot of times they navigate at home, but then when they either are out driving or you're seeing how they're getting in and out of the car, those kind of things. It's not just observing them in their home environment.
Yeah, that's a good point. We see a lot of what we call furniture walking, where they're using the furniture for balance. So, yes, that's so true.
So, does anybody have any questions before we go any further with Alicia? Anything that's weighing on your mind or you've noticed or a question you've had?
I could add something. And even though you don't see me, I'm a senior, 79. I was just thinking, one thing that Alicia didn't bring up, because even though you may have experience with a lot of seniors, you haven't walked in their shoes. I can't speak for any particular seniors, though I know many, but I think my outlook on life has changed, perhaps because of the type of person I am. But I've noticed the introspection aspect, reflecting back on life and so on. I think as I've gotten older, a lot of things that used to be important to me are no longer important. Even though I toy with the idea of doing things that I used to like to do, I begin to realize the uselessness or hopelessness of trying to attempt something that I would do when I was much younger. Consequently, it causes me to be more pessimistic, let's say, about optimal outcomes. So what I'm trying to say is, in representing perhaps many seniors, is that there's a certain hopeless aspect of regaining the youthful concepts therein. They might be kind of giving up on doing a lot of things that otherwise they would aspire to doing. So I think this kind of plays into lack of activity, lack of desire to get out and do more, because they realize they're closer to the end than the beginning, notwithstanding not just the mental capacity, but also certainly the physical factors. So there is that giving up type of aspect. I'm quite challenged because Alicia hit on a number of things that do describe me. I'm pretty much a full-time caregiver at this stage of the game. I have causes that take me away from some of the purposes in life that I would like to aspire to. So you may see a lot of older couples that are stuck in that syndrome, that circle, where no matter what they want to do, they're kind of bound, a bond of life and love that causes them to expect less of themselves, let's say, as far as getting out into the world. I digressed much there, but I just wanted to give you that kind of insight.
That's a very good point, Dan. Just a question I have for you. Because you are a full-time caregiver, are you part of any support group for caregivers?
No, not really. We moved up to Lake Elsinore on the very day that COVID was declared a pandemic. And so for 2 years, we were in lockdown. And so it was hard to get to know people. So we're sort of strangers in a strange land. I've gotten to know a lot of people, but it's kind of hard to get away from my scenario right now. I've talked to a few people, but ironically, when I was down in San Diego, I had all kinds of connections. And I still volunteer and go down to San Diego to do my volunteer work. But up here, I don't know anyone. I know of organizations, but in Lake Elsinore, it's a worn horse town. And I'd have to travel about 20 or 30 miles to get involved more in organizations that are supportive. So I don't know if I answered that question, but no, not really.
Okay, because I highly recommend caregiver support groups. There's even one that comes to mind called Well Spouse because they're on Zoom, so they're national. You don't have to worry about going somewhere. Just so helpful for that emotional aspect, that encouragement, perspective, ideas, just knowing that you're not going through the caregiver process alone. I just can't say enough about it. Sometimes people are hesitant to join a support group, but when they do, usually the common thing I'll hear is they wish they would have done it sooner. So just something I could pass along.
Yeah, I went down to Temecula to join a support group, but yes, I wasn't aware of the film possibilities to do that. Having been a long-term care ompud for over 13 years, I don't want to overestimate myself, but I kind of feel like I'm aware of all the pitfalls and trappings. Being in this scenario, like I said, I've made a lot of friends by joining a group that has a lot of seniors. And I guess I'm just going along until I get to that point where I won't be able to do it anymore alone. But psychologically, I feel fairly prepared for that still. Now, this has been going on for about 5 years. From the beginning of noticing signs to now, 5 years. So it might have begun 6 years ago. But how shall I put it? Physically, not psychologically, but physically, it's getting more challenging. My health is very good, but I'm not as strong as I used to be. I don't have the stamina that I used to have. So I think that will be my limitation before the psychological aspect. But really, you are right. It's still got a lot in store for me down the road. I know that.
Although I'm not an aging life care manager, one of the things that I've really learned about is that social isolation component. And caregiving is really tough. It is a hard thing. It's hard because you have to be strong. You're caring for this person that you love. That's taking its toll to then go into this isolation. I mean, we all talked about isolation after COVID. You could see the decline in so many people's, in our children's health, right? Like they can do anything in their bodies, but their mental health took a toll. So to Alicia's point, I think any kind of support, any kind of environment that you can be in so that you are not by yourself. I think that's also really true of the adult children too, as we are going through this process and seeing our parents age and what that means to us as we change our roles with our parents. Dan, I really appreciate you sharing your wisdom on this because you're right. None of us have walked in your shoes yet. Thank you for that vulnerability.
I just want to say on a personal note, I've made it a point to take my wife dancing, out for dinner and dancing on a Friday night. We belong to a club where there are a lot of seniors in it. So there's that. In the last 3 years, I've been actively involved being a board member on my homeowner association. I wouldn't say that I'm isolated. And of course, I do my volunteer work down in San Diego and communicate with people that way. I still have some life.
Okay, well, let me just say this. I had cancer 20 years ago, and there is an expression, misery loves company. I was going through cancer. It was really, really helpful for me to connect with other people who were walking in those shoes. So I guess maybe you're not isolated, but having the support of other people who understand what it's like to caregive for a spouse, I just think would be a big improvement to where you're at right now.
Point well taken.
Alicia, do you want me to ask you some more questions, or does anybody else have any questions that you'd like to ask Alicia before I move on? Okay, well, I'm going to confess I asked AI to help me with some of these if we were to be interviewing an aging life care manager. So one of the questions that Claude gave me is, what's the difference between normal aging changes and red flags that require intervention?
Okay. I'm glad you're asking that question because I think sometimes people have misconceptions of between the difference of normal aging or think that they see a picture and with ageism and the way things are that they just kind of stereotype the way aging is, but there is a difference. With normal aging, there's the expected physiological and cognitive changes. We do have changes that happen as we age. So I'll go through those first. So we do have things like slower reaction times. We might have stiffness in joints, reduced muscle mass and strength. We might have changes in our vision, loss of hearing and vision as well, decreased skin elasticity and dryness. There might be some mild balance issues, mild forgetfulness, like forgetting someone's name, occasional word finding difficulty, but not serious cognitive things. There might be a slight decrease in social activity, often due to retirement or mobility issues, or even like what you talked about, Jamie, where there's just a desire to be more reflective. So they're not really wanting to be out as much. There might be more need for downtime or rest time. So that's normal aging. But if we're looking at this from a perspective of adult children, trying to see what their parents might be experiencing and those red flags that make us need to have some intervention, that's different. There's red flags that we want to be looking for. So physically would be like sudden or unexplained weight loss, difficulty eating or swallowing, frequent falls. There's just significant or dramatic changes in or losses in mobility, severe joint pain or swelling that's debilitating, incontinence issues that either comes on suddenly or it's there and then it worsens, impacting quality of life. Then general health, shortness of breath, chest pain, any type of new symptom or something that gets worse, anything in their health, of course, we want to address. We see them neglecting their own health needs. They might have chronic conditions like diabetes or hypertension that they're starting to neglect or not pay attention to and manage well. They're forgetting to get prescriptions refilled, and they're reluctant to see a doctor. There's just like an ongoing neglect of self-care and hygiene issues as well. We start to see bathing being an issue or changing clothes. Cognitively, we might see that their memory loss is disrupting their daily life. So they're forgetting appointments, they're getting lost in familiar places, they're just having more confusion and difficulty completing familiar tasks. We like to say they're just having troubles connecting the dots on things that used to be a little bit easier for them to do. There might be language problems with speaking or just not using the appropriate word or trouble with writing. There could be an onset of unusual paranoia or suspicion or fearfulness. Then loss of ability to manage medications just because of the confusion. We might see an increase in poor judgment where there's an impulsiveness or risky behavior, that they're just not making decisions that they would have otherwise done in a little better state of mind. Even unsafe driving, we start to see more exhibited. Then there's a loss of ability to manage their finances. Even simple financial things like writing a check becomes an issue or a problem. Then we see red flags in their emotional and mental health issues. They have persistent depression or anxiety. Not just a little bit of sadness, but there's just more heavy depression or anxiety. And then they have a sudden withdrawal of activities, social activities, where they really cut everything out. Those are the red flags, and those are the most common. I got a call today from a woman who just came back from a vacation, and she's worried about her mom. She left for 3 weeks. In 3 weeks, just being able to step away, she was able to see that, oh, wow, mom's not doing as well as I thought she was. She had another fall while I was gone. She seems confused about her medicines. She started to notice that she's not eating. I really think that she's lost some weight. So that stepping back was able to give her new eyes and see that mom's not doing quite as well. Basically, she's like, I think I need to have her assessed to see that we might be needing to get more help come in. These red flags are the ones that would require intervention.
That was a lot. Wow.
That was great. Alicia, one thing I would add to that is I work with a lot of adult children. I think we all do. I think that your list was comprehensive and really valuable for our audience. I'm happy that we're recording this because one of the things I see is that we have a tendency to see things through our own lens. I'll give you a specific example. I'm working with a client right now, and she has 2 sons. As I did the intake and I spoke to each of the sons independently, one son has it that she's ready for hospice, and the other son has it that she'll go back to living independently. So it's 2 very different views, but it's because they're looking through their own lens. I think one might be a little bit further, oh no, we're at the end, and the other one is like, we're nowhere near that. And the truth probably lies somewhere in the middle. I think we have to be responsible for how we're seeing things. I like your list. I love your list because that's more practical, right? You can literally like look at it and say, okay, realistically, where are we at here?
Thank you. Anybody else have questions before I go ahead? Okay. The next question is, how do we assess whether our parents' home is still safe without being intrusive or making them feel judged?
Okay, well, with anything, when we talk with our parents or older adult loved ones, we always want to respect their autonomy, their value system, the way that they want to live their life. We just want to come alongside them in an aspect of being supportive. When it comes to coming into someone's home, we want to make sure that we're assessing, because there are those environmental issues that can cause hazards and make a difference in how someone can prolong their ability to stay in their home. but it's good to be a little bit strategic and purposeful about how you do it. So you want to have empathy and some strategy to it. If you do go to your parents' house, you want to know that that time is the time you're going to be observant. It's not casual, but you're not there to point out everything that's wrong. You're just starting to make observations because you're coming into their home and just starting to take note of what you see. You're observant without showing them things right away. As you start to notice things like maybe there is more lighting that needs to go down the hall, or you notice that a threshold is uneven and it's going to cause a trip hazard. When you take note of those things, then you can naturally go back and say to your mom or dad that you want to see a little bit. You're thinking to yourself, I want to see a little bit more, but you're going to now help them with maybe some chores like, Mom, let me help you do the dishes, or let me help you clean out this closet. Some families, they don't want the kids in the back part of the house. They don't want the kids in other parts of the house. So you have to be respectful of that, but yet maybe we want to see what the situation is in the bathroom. Are things safe? You want to be tactful in your approach and ask that permission and see if you can help with the chores and then start to make observations. Once you start to see those issues, you want to frame it as you have concern or care, not criticism. You might want to say, I want to make sure that you're comfortable here in your home and safe as possible. Have you thought about putting lighting down the hall or a motion sensor going from one room to the other so that the light pops on? Have you thought about bringing a drop-down cupboard because you see Mom getting on the stool to reach something? You want to be subtle in those suggestions and then help them to look at their environment and have perspective on, oh, yeah, I should probably consider these things. You can also ask their opinion on things like, oh, do you feel steady on the stairs? Then you can also swap comfort or convenience ideas instead of safety. So say, for example, we deal with throw rugs that are slippery all the time. So you can say, oh, gosh, this is a great padded non-stick rug that would be great for your floor right here, instead of say, you need to remove that because that's going to make you slip and fall. So just find gentle ways to make suggestions for swapping out concerns with a better option. You can also use shared stories. Ideally, you want them to be truthful stories, but it's okay if it's fictional. Oh gosh, I have a friend at work and she was telling me how her mom fell in the bathroom, but she just had these grab bars put up and lo and behold, she was able to grab onto it and it stopped her from falling. Have you ever thought about grab bars in the bathroom? By using a shared story, you can come alongside them as well. If those things don't work, because again, family dynamics are different for everyone, sometimes families don't want to hear suggestions from their adult children. They would hear it from a third party more likely. Then you can say that, again, you've read in RP that home assessments for safety are something good to consider if you want to live as independently and safely as possible in your environment. Then you can make recommendations. Oh, there's occupational therapists through home health that will come out and do a home safety assessment. There's construction companies now that do aging in place assessments, and there's mobility companies and even care managers that have the ability to do assessments. You just might need that third party in order to help bridge that gap to help make the home safer.
That was great. That actually reminded me of a story that we had with a client where the adult daughters had not been in their mother's home. She would go to visit them, and it was 10 years. And their mother fell down a two-story home, and when they went into the home, they discovered that their mother had hoarding disorder. It was a really, really unsafe environment. There was a lot of shame and embarrassment. It was a lot for the children to have to deal with. And that's a whole other conversation. But if you have parents that don't want you to come into the home, that might also be something to consider. And I also just wanted to share one of the times where I brought you in, Alesia. One of my good friends has a mom. She's an only child, and the mom is putting a lot on her. My friend is trying to complete her doctorate degree I think at 55, which is amazing. So I suggested they brought Alesia in because it was that third party. It wasn't the adult daughter, because you have those resources. So I find that's the case too, even when our company goes in to help families sort through belongings. That adult child and that parent are going at it, Mom, you don't need this. And they don't want to hear that from their adult child. But when we come in and say, you don't need this, then they hear it really differently. And we keep the family. Do you have any questions so far, anybody? Or do you want me to keep going? I'm going to keep going.
Okay.
This is a
Keep
good.
in mind, if you don't want to speak up, you can type your question into the chat as well.
Thank you, Julie. When it comes to driving, conversations should families have before there's a crisis?
Okay. This is always a tough one, the driving. So again, being empathetic and honoring your parents and being strategic about how you have these conversations is really important. Particularly, we find that it's good to have someone lead the conversation who has the best relationship with the parents. So, say, for example, in my family, there's 6 of us, and my younger brother, we tease and joke that he's the chosen child. My dad and he have a really great relationship. So, if there's anything we need to get communicated to my dad, we're going to put my youngest brother with dad. You want to choose that person to lead the conversation, but there needs to be a unified front. Everybody, siblings, spouses, it needs to be in agreement that this is an important topic. Driving is a concern, and we can plan for it because we're talking about how we can make the best path ahead, but that there is a time, because all of us at one point are not going to be able to drive, but how do we plan for that? We want to have that conversation. You want to make a dedicated, uninterrupted time to sit down and have this conversation. And you want to start with some empathy and talk about how they feel about their driving lately. Do they feel confident? Do they notice any changes? Just listen and see if they start to share anything. Just like I noticed it's a little more challenging to park when it's busy downtown. Just take a little mental note of those things and continue to validate their independence with driving and knowing that it's an important aspect of their life, but that you're here to find out how we can make sure that we continue to ensure their independence as it might come a time when driving is difficult to do. You want to discuss that there can be warning signs with driving. There's changes in health as a result of aging, like we talked about before, with vision, hearing, slower reflexes, paying attention to medications or things that might impact their ability to drive. Just having those frank conversations about these things that can impact driving. And just knowing that there's warning signs if they're having difficulty getting from place to place, they might have a propensity to get lost. Those are kinds of other things that we just want to talk about that could happen down the road. You're just kind of setting the scenes of the warning signs of when driving can become difficult. But you want to then start about, we're going to make a plan. We're going to make a plan to look out ahead for how to manage for retiring from driving. So it can be a slow process. It doesn't have to happen this year. It could be 5 years down the road. We don't know, but we're making that plan. Part of that can be involving your healthcare professionals. Most people have their Medicare yearly physical and their assessment. You can ask the doctor to weigh in their opinion on whether or not they think that you're still able to drive. So you get that yearly assessment from the doctor. But then you can also talk about maybe even taking driving course options. So AARP has a driving course option so that, there's safety and they can make recommendations and see how you're driving. And AAA has that. Even locally in San Diego, some of the hospitals, the rehab, like Scripps Sanitas Rehab has an occupational driving program. They can help to make sure that you're safe and your car is set up to be safe. We want to talk to the older adult about that. Maybe there's some vehicle modifications. Maybe it's difficult for you to get in and out of the car, so you need a swivel on your seat. Maybe getting arthritis in your knee, so extending your knee all the way is becoming challenging. So now we're going to get a pedal extender. We're talking about positive ways we can continue to drive. And the other option is even going to your dealership and looking at those in-vehicle safety technology like bigger mirrors or backup cameras, things like that just optimize the safety of driving. Once you've gone through all those things, then you want to have a written agreement or understanding of how driving is going to be reassessed. Are you going to do the driving program every year, talk to the doctor about assessing and seeing what their point of opinion is? But you need to really write down what are going to be the triggers of when it's time. And that could be like an accident, sudden changes in confusion, sudden changes in health, and that you're agreed upon that now is the time to stop. You want to have that written out as well. In general, you can design a gradual transition. You can start to talk about maybe 3 years from now, where you're starting to see it's getting difficult to drive on the freeway. It's getting difficult to park in town. So maybe you're not going to drive on the freeway. Maybe you're not going to drive at night when it's difficult. So just like gradual transition. And maybe the next step can be start to say, I don't necessarily want to make this long trip to the doctor's appointment. I'm going to look at a ride sharing program. I'm going to call 211 in San Diego and find out about the FACT driving program. Or maybe I want to take a trip to a community event and I'm going to see what type of ride sharing programs that there are. You're going to start to practice with those and see how that is. Basically, we're doing trial periods of slowly pulling back from the driving until you start to realize that you can live a high quality of life without the driving. The motto we tend to say a lot is we hope for the best, but you have to make a plan for the worst. So you've covered your bases, and that applies to driving and everything else. The idea is then to just continue to give a hopeful option.
That's brilliant. Thank you. I want to go back to what you said in the beginning about your youngest brother and him being the one who can relate. I've actually seen this happen very recently where it was actually the daughter-in-law in one situation where the daughter-in-law was the person that they listened to. Everyone in the family listened to the daughter-in-law. Then in this other situation, it was the grandson-in-law. It was actually the grandson-in-law who came out touring, brought her from Washington to tour because he was the one that could have that conversation with her and could guide her through. So it may not be the sibling, right? It may not be, it might be an in-law that is actually the appropriate person.
Actually did an assessment about a month ago, and it was the son-in-law who was the person I was working with because his wife, and there just was an issue. Yes, I 100% agree. You got to find that point of contact that's going to be the most agreeable for that individual.
One other big thing that I think would be important for us to talk about is medication management.
Mhm.
I will share that as I shared at the beginning, I have ADHD, and a lot of the things that I am facing with ADHD are very common for people who are aging. I am definitely noticing issues with my short term memory and other things, but medication for me has been a challenge because I will forget in the morning if I've taken my medication. So I think if I'm already 55 and facing that, I would love to hear what suggestions you have for medication management.
Okay. So the first thing there, it's so important, is to make sure that the medications are the right medications to be taking so that you have that conversation with either yourself or that older adult loved one's physician, that we know clearly what the medications are, what the dosing is, when it's supposed to be taken, so that there's no confusion, and what the purpose is for. That's clearly written out, and that's something that you reassess often. Just always ask for those to be written instructions. Don't just go by verbal.
I would also just interrupt with that too, that sometimes people are going to different places and getting different
Yes.
medications, and then that drug interaction. I just want to make sure that whatever you're taking, you're going to one pharmacy so that somebody knows who's knowledgeable what you're supposed to be taking.
Exactly. I'll touch on that too. We encourage assessments for the medications from pharmacists or geriatricians, but 100% agree. Once you're clear on the medications for our older adult loved one, we want to make sure that we try to simplify the management of that medications. There's all kinds of tools, especially nowadays. The least favorite is just popping off the bottle every day and trying to take it at the right time with reminders. We usually try to encourage setting up a pill box where it's done once a week or even once a month. So it's just already there, and that coincides with sometimes the time of day. If you have AM, we know they're going to take them at breakfast, PM with dinner. If there's a noontime pill, maybe when Jeopardy's on, or something that you connect it with something so it's practical, so they make sure they take it. That works if they don't want to use a timer. But in addition, it's also good to work with your physician to make sure they're not taking multiple medications. We're not having 4 and 5 dosings throughout the day. That just gets to be a lot. So sometimes, not always, you can make it so that the dosing is brought down to 1 or 2 a day of a certain prescription. That will help. So again, it's back to simplifying. Then you can post the medication. We see a lot of families have success with printing up on the internet what the pill looks like and posting that next to the medication, so they're very clear on what that pill looks like, and posting that either on the mirror in the bathroom or the refrigerator. Also, making sure that if any of the bottles that you write clearly on them, morning and PM, because we have vision issues, the bottles need to be properly labeled and go through and help and clean out any expired medications. I've seen older adults, it's still in the bottle, so it must still be good, but it expired 7 months ago. So no, those need to be removed. So go through that with them as well. Then technology is wonderful. We have automatic pill dispensers, but again, this goes back to what will the older adult like to use, and you want to make sure that it's easy for them. So there's devices like the Hero or the MedMinder or Tricilla pill box. There's a lot of devices that not only serve to alert so that it dispenses them and then alerts the older adult, but also if they miss a dose, it can be set up to send an alert on an app to the caregiver. Again, they have to be comfortable with that type of monitoring, but it does really help, and it gives you peace of mind as an adult child to know that mom or dad took their medication at the appropriate time. There's things like electronic pill boxes, or you can even use like Alexa. There's a thing called Rosie Reminder that can help remind you to take the pills from the pill boxes. And there's wearables like the watches. Those are the technology devices that you can use. Then there's the bubble packs, or like where you can do pharmacy delivery, where you could come to you and it's prepackaged and it'll say Tuesday AM, and they just open up the package. So those sometimes are preferred, even using home delivery services for medications also, because that can also be important for older adults that might have trouble remembering to renew their medications. If it's set up that it's automatic and it's getting down to that end of the medication renewal, they'll call you, but they actually just continue to send them out, and they actually send out a larger number. We always recommend If you can, do 90-day instead of 30-day, because it's always good to have backup even for emergencies as well. As far as from a family perspective, if the older adult doesn't want to use some of the technology, they just want to use the pill box, but you're concerned, you could talk to them about, Mom, are you okay if I call you at the end of the day to see if you took your pills? But again, honoring their wishes, not just say, I'm calling a chicken. You want to make sure that they're okay with that calling. If there's cognitive issues, these systems are, especially the electronic pill boxes, are handy. But we find that with cognitive issues, if the alert goes off, depending on where they are cognitively, they're not able to identify that alert is connected to something like a pill box and to take that pill. Even in those cases, we find that we need to rely on caregivers, whether they're family caregivers or paid caregivers, to make sure that older adult with cognitive issues takes that medication. Again, to Jamie's point in the beginning, we recommend, especially if there's a change in medication, that you consult with the pharmacist, that there's a clear knowledge of every single pill that's being taken so that the left hand knows what the right hand's doing, so that pharmacist can be able to review the medication, make sure there's no interactions, and so that you're always knowing that the appropriate medication is safe for that older adult, because medications don't metabolize the same on older adults as they do when we're younger. So it's real important to have those reviews done.
Wow, this has been amazing, amazing. Is there anybody that has any questions as we're coming to the end of the hour that Alesia or we did not address that you came here to find out?
I had one question. If you notice cognitive decline, like the memory and maybe not being able to follow a conversation, but in the case of my mother, she's aware of her memory failings and she's also afraid of learning more about it. So I've said, can we talk to your doctor about your memory? No, that's okay. So how can I nudge her in that?
So do you go to her doctor's appointments with her?
Yes.
You do? Okay. Does the doctor do the annual Medicare screening where they usually will do a cognitive screening?
No, we haven't really had anything like that.
Are you her power of attorney for healthcare?
Yes.
Okay. When you start, early intervention matters, especially when we see cognitive changes. Often when there's cognitive things, you may or may not get the buy-in of that older adult, but yet it's still important that it gets addressed. If you serve in that role of her power of attorney for healthcare, then that's been put upon you to make that decision for her to make sure that she gets the best of medical care. In that case, it would not be out of line to call the doctor's office and ask the doctor at the next appointment if they could do a cognitive screening. It doesn't have to be that the doctor is making a big declaration that we're checking your cognition and it's something scary. They just say, we're going to ask you a couple of questions to see what your memory's like. And they go through the screening. It helps give a baseline. And it helps whether or not they even tell her the results. They don't necessarily need to do so. But as a power of attorney for healthcare, they can let you know. So if you're worried about her processing that at that time, you can have that conversation with the doctor. If there is, for example, some type of, usually a broad stroke, a dementia or a cognitive type of issue, you do want to tell her at some point, but you want to talk that through with the doctor. It at least allows you to then take the next step. Do we need to see a neurologist? Do we need to have immediate intervention? But just to wait for her buy-in probably is not going to be the best decision for her, if that makes sense.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
I love the expression, just because our eyes are closed doesn't mean it isn't there. That was a part of the catalyst for even starting this series, because it's hard to confront all of these things, but they're happening whether we're going to look at them or not.
I love what you said, Alesia, about responsibility. So as the power of attorney for healthcare, it is your responsibility. If you are dealing with cognitive decline, they may not have the capacity or they're afraid, in denial, whatever that is. But it's your responsibility to support them. And that's what they've chosen you to do that.
I have a question.
Sure.
This is Cheryl.
Hi, Cheryl.
Hi. So I took care of my husband for like 4 years at home until I couldn't do it anymore in December 23. And now my mom being 96, my sister has her at her home. There are 3 adult sisters who participate in her care. But of course, the one that she's living with has the most responsibility and the power of attorney for medical decisions.
Now, my mom has this cognitive decline and she cannot make decisions too well, but she knows that she doesn't want her children telling her different things. I understand what was explained earlier about finding someone that she could confide in, but this is my question because my younger sister, she's living with her. She does not, first of all three sisters disagree with how to take care of mom, but the one that she's living with has to do that. So I want to know, how would you encourage your siblings to learn more about it? In this case, it is dementia with my mom and her aging because she doesn't seem to want to go along with with mom on some things because I don't think she realizes that this is a disease that mom cannot handle, and mom is not the same that she used to be. She kind of handles her just like, oh, you're just mom and we're going to do this. So there's a lot of disagreement between the two because I couldn't find enough information to take care of my husband at the time because it just came on all of a sudden when it got really bad and there just wasn't time even to take care of myself that well. I can't get my sisters to see that mom is frail. She can't make the decisions you're expecting her to make. We need to learn more about it because we are the ones that can learn about it. Mom's not going to change who she is. She's still not the same mom that we used to know.
Mm. A couple of things. So first, let me ask you, Cheryl, does that sister take her to the doctor regularly?
She does, and I have a problem with that because when she goes to the doctor with her, the doctor will say, how long has she done this or been experiencing this pain on this side or what have you? My sister tells me, because I've asked her, she says, I don't answer. And I said, well, why won't you answer? You need to help the doctor to take care of mom. She says, no, because I don't want to be wrong. I don't want to tell them the wrong thing. And so I don't. But see, my mom can't tell them. She doesn't remember when it started, the pain. But when I talk to her, I'm like 4 hour drive away from Bakersfield. I'm in San Diego. When I go up there, I talk to my mom on the phone a lot, and she tells me I got this pain, and I take mental note because I've been there and done that with my husband, right? But I can't get my sister to understand that it's not the same. When you go to the doctor, you should help the doctor and help mom by telling the doctor what you have observed. You know, you've observed some things. So it's difficult.
Yeah, sometimes sibling or family dynamics are some of the hardest things that we manage with helping families. So she does have power of attorney for health care,
Yeah.
sister, is what my understanding is. Is there anyone else other than you or someone outside that would be able to talk to her to help her to understand that it would be good for us to get a clear picture of mom's health and diagnosis so that we know how to provide proper care for her? Is there anyone else outside the family she would listen to?
Well, I'm not sure. I'm really not sure of that. I know my mom has certain people outside the family that she feels comfortable talking to, but my sister, I'm not sure that she would receive it from anyone because of, like you said, family dynamics. She lost her daughter about going on 3 years now. And I think with mom being with her for about 4.5 years, I don't even think she's taking time to grieve the loss of her daughter. She's got a lot of things going on in her life. So I don't know of anyone that can get through her. Her background is an attorney, a district attorney up in Bakersfield, but it's hard to tell a lawyer anything, I think.
Sometimes when we have families that they can't find a middle ground between all of them, we'll recommend family mediation. Would she consider something like that? Or maybe you could just say as a favor to you that you just feel so pulled because you're out of touch with mom that it would help you feel like you're part of coming up with a plan. If we were to have a mediator to come in and talk about how we can all work together to provide care for mom, would she consider that?
Maybe. How do you get these mediators? Where are they?
Where's your mom located?
She's in Bakersfield, California.
Bakersfield, okay. So there are some care managers that they're specialists in family mediation. So that would be one place to look. But even with family counselors, there's also family counselors that specialize in aging that can also help as well, that serve as mediators. We find that is successful as well. I can look, if you want, Cheryl, I'm happy to share my email. You can email me and I could look on our Aging Life Care Association resources and see if I can find a care manager in Bakersfield area that might be able to serve in that role. But if not, we could try to see if we could find a counselor that serves in the role of family mediation.
Okay, that sounds fine. Thank you.